Your soulmate's response prompted everyone to speak when your soulmate's relatives inquired about you last night. Don't skip, my dear youngster. Take a minute to reflect because yesterday night's events were not typical family discussions. It started with a straightforward query, but before the evening was over, the room was completely silent. Every face turned to face your sweetheart, waiting for what they thought would be a simple response. Rather, they heard something unexpected. There's a big thing waiting for you, so stay until the very end. Everyone expected your soulmate would avoid the truth once more because they had been keeping their innermost feelings hidden for so long. However, last night was not the same. The atmosphere seemed unusually quiet, as if time itself was curious about what would be spoken next. No one laughed when a family member leaned closer and whispered, "Who is the person you can't stop thinking about?" Nobody spoke up. Suddenly, every heartbeat in the room seemed to be louder than the actual discourse. Your sweetheart remained silent for a few long seconds. They just glanced down, grinned in a way that no one had ever seen, and inhaled slowly, carrying the burden of many unsaid emotions. Everyone recognized at that very instant that this response was going to completely alter their worldview. Even the tiniest sound seemed impossible to ignore as the room fell silent. They anticipated justifications. They anticipated reluctance. They anticipated another attempt to disguise themselves with courteous language. However, your soulmate eventually raised their head and spoke with a serene assurance that even they were taken aback. They acknowledged that one individual had subtly altered their perspective on life. One person whose memory surfaced on quiet nights, challenging afternoons, and typical mornings. One person who, for some reason, gave every dream for the future greater significance than every previous plan. Like lightning, those words struck. They had never spoken with such assurance before. Every expression around the table gradually shifted from curiosity to utter incredulity as each statement was revealed. Everyone believed that the conversation had peaked, but then someone from across the table asked another surprise question. "Why haven't we met this person if they are so important to you?" Before responding, your lover briefly closed their eyes. The stop was not due to fear. It was feeling. They were aware that they would never be able to undo what happened next. This following moment is where things changed forever, so don't skip it. Rather than providing an explanation, your soulmate revealed something very intimate. They acknowledged that time alone is insufficient to gauge all linkages. There are those who come silently and leave a lasting impression on the heart. They clarified that some emotions become stronger because they endure ambiguity, distance, and unresolved issues rather than because they are simple. Without speaking, the family members exchanged glances. Instead of the straightforward narrative they had anticipated, they saw someone honestly defending a relationship. One elderly relative nodded slowly, as though recalling something from a long time ago. Through teary eyes, another grinned. They were powerless to argue, even those who had been skeptical just seconds before. The whole atmosphere changed. What had begun as a light-hearted discussion now seemed to be the beginnings of something truly remarkable. Everyone in the room seemed to finally realize that your love was guarding something extremely valuable. However, none was aware that the greatest surprise had not yet been made public. Then came the question that, until the very end, no one had the guts to ask. The quiet was broken by a faint voice. What would you say if that individual were in front of you right now? Once more, the room froze. There's a big thing waiting for you, so stay until the very end. Your sweetheart seemed to be looking beyond the night's darkness as they gazed out the window. A soft smile emerged, followed by words so unexpected that all conversations came to an abrupt halt. They declared that they would not start with grandiose statements, unattainable goals, or promises. They would merely express gratitude to that individual for unintentionally providing them with hope at times when it seemed hard to find. They would acknowledge that the notion of that one unique individual had subtly influenced every significant decision they had recently made. Finally, with total assurance, they acknowledged that nothing, not even time, distance, or uncertainty, had changed how they really felt on the inside. Long after they were said, those remarks continued to reverberate around the room. Nobody spoke up. Nobody asked them any questions. The biggest reaction of all was the quiet itself. However, just as everyone thought the discussion was over, a family member carefully went inside a pocket, took out something unexpected, and set it down on the table. Your soulmate's face lost its color the instant they saw it, and everyone would be stunned by what transpired next. At first sight, the item on the table did not appear particularly noteworthy. However, your soulmate's entire being transformed the moment they realized it. For a moment, no one in the room dared to breathe as their self-assured expression vanished into utter quiet. Don't skip it because what transpired next turned out to be the night's pivotal moment. There's a big thing waiting for you, so stay until the very end. A family member discreetly revealed that the object had been concealed for a considerable amount of time, awaiting the appropriate opportunity to make it public. It had to do with a chat your lover had once thought no one had heard. All of a sudden, deep-seated memories suddenly surfaced. All of the moments they had envisaged a future with you, the silent hope they had guarded, and the smile they had concealed came back at once. It was no longer like a typical family get-together. It seemed to be a place where the truth could no longer be concealed. Then, with amazing composure, your love revealed something they had never told anyone. They claimed that every time they made an effort to move on, life somehow reminded them of you. They were reminded of an incomplete chapter with each new beginning. Every accomplishment felt unfinished since there was always someone they wanted could have seen it. Everyone was astounded by the candor in their voice. Slowly, even those who had previously urged them to forget everything came to the realization that they had misjudged the strength of this bond. One relative muttered softly, "I've never seen you speak like this before." Another just lowered their gaze, realizing that this was more than a fleeting feeling. It had become an integral part of your soulmate. When someone asked, "What makes this person different from everyone else?" Out of the blue, the talk became even more in-depth. The question reverberated throughout the room, and everyone's gaze once more focused to your soulmate. The response left every heart utterly unprepared, so don't skip. Your soulmate spoke about something much more potent than appearance or commonplace traits. They claimed that your presence had altered their self-perception. They had been seeking the world's approval before considering you. However, once they encountered your vibe, they started looking for tranquility rather than attention. They acknowledged that, even in times when life seemed uncertain, you had unintentionally motivated them to grow stronger, kinder, and more patient. Clear's throat, the family members looked at each other in shock, since they had never heard them speak so clearly. True connections never start with perfection, an elderly relative stated with a gentle smile. They start with metamorphosis. Everyone in the room felt the quiet reality of those statements. Then a surprising revelation came from another family member. They acknowledged that after spending weeks watching your sweetheart, they had seen one clear shift. Their laughter became more genuine. They were less concerned in making an impression on others. Once more, they had optimism in their eyes. Unbeknownst to you, your soulmate had already addressed every query before you even spoke. Their lives had turned into evidence of their emotions. As everyone thought there was nothing more to say, the family's eldest member quietly rose to her feet and spoke in a soothing voice that all conversations came to an abrupt halt. There's a big thing waiting for you, so stay until the very end. They claimed to have seen innumerable people throughout their lives chase fleeting emotions. However, what they had seen this evening was entirely different. If someone can change your heart without being by your side every day, then that connection deserves to be protected, not ignored, they added in a low voice while staring directly at your soulmate. There was stillness in the room after those words, and nobody wanted to disturb it. Overwhelmed by feelings they had been holding inside for far too long, your partner bowed their head. Then, just as everyone was beginning to believe that the evening was coming to a close, another surprising fact emerged. A family member acknowledged that you had already been the subject of days of inquiries from someone outside the family, quietly attempting to find out more about the person who had so profoundly changed your partner. The tension in the room quickly returned. Your sweetheart looked up in shock, realizing they had no idea who this enigmatic figure might be or why they had materialized out of nowhere. All they believed to be true may be altered by the name that was about to be said next. Every eye in the room moved to the relative who had alluded to the enigmatic guest, and a soft silence descended. Unable to contain their growing curiosity, your lover pushed forward. Don't skip it because what transpired next drastically altered the mood. There's a big thing waiting for you, so stay until the very end. Slowly, the relative related that a few days prior, someone had made a single, straightforward request. They were interested in learning as much as they could about the individual who had changed your soulmate's heart. Every talk somehow came back to you, even if no one realized why those questions were being asked. The stranger never expressed doubt or condemnation. Rather, they listened intently as if they were attempting to comprehend the significance of your name. Family members started relaying the small details they had observed over the previous few months, one by one. They acknowledged that your sweetheart had grown more patient, hopeful, and at ease than before. They grinned naturally. Rather than focusing on the past, they discussed the future. There was a quiet confidence that had never existed before, even on bad days. Your sweetheart came to an incredible realization as these observations flooded the room. They had transformed so organically that they were unaware of it. Then, with a quiet smile, a relative said, "Maybe this person never entered your life to interrupt your journey. Maybe they entered to reveal the version of you that had been waiting all along." The words resonated in the quiet, touching everyone's heart at the table. When another family member revealed something they had concealed, the discussion got even more poignant. They acknowledged that they had initially questioned this relationship. They thought it would eventually go away like any other emotion. However, they were aware that this was different after witnessing your soulmate refrain from criticizing you, even while you were confused. The most poignant scene was still ahead, so don't miss it. They remembered nights when your sweetheart sat by themselves in silence, not because they were lonely but rather because they were reflecting seriously on a future they hoped might one day come true. While reading past texts, they recalled seeing your partner grin. They then instantly looked out the window, as if they were dreaming of a life that was yet to come. Each family member started talking about memories they had never talked about before, one by one. Your sweetheart suddenly realized something amazing. The people closest to them had been observing their emotions the entire time, even though they thought they had been hiding them. No one had chuckled. No one had passed judgment. Rather, they had only been waiting for the moment when your partner would come out of hiding. There were no more questions in the room. It was full of comprehension. Your soulmate realized for the first time that they were no longer the only one telling this tale. Then, cautiously, the eldest member of the family reached for a small envelope that had not been touched all evening. The room became quiet once more. "There's a big thing waiting for you, so stay until the very end." Confused, your partner examined the paper inside and froze as they carefully placed the package in front of them and whispered, "This was never meant to be opened until you were absolutely certain about your heart." It was neither a forecast nor a pledge. It was a handwritten note with words that someone had said years ago. Your true journey will start the moment you no longer fear telling the truth about the person who transformed your life. The room was filled with a surge of emotion. Nobody could understand how such words related to the talk they had just had. Overwhelmed by the thought that every secret moment, every unspoken hope, and every unsolved question had somehow culminated in this evening, your love looked about. However, a phone that was lying on the table abruptly lit up before anyone could say another word. The dazzling screen caught everyone's attention. The name that showed up there was totally unanticipated. Your soulmate whispered a single sentence as soon as they realized it. "I never thought that tonight would be the day." Every eye in the room was drawn to the brilliant screen. But nobody picked up the phone. Your lover just gazed at the name, perhaps terrified that if they moved too fast, the moment might be lost. The next few seconds carried more weight than anyone could have predicted, so don't skip them. There's a big thing waiting for you, so stay until the very end. One family member nodded silently, and another whispered, "Answer it." However, your partner took a deep breath and revealed something that shocked everyone once more before they touched the screen. They admitted that they had pictured this scene hundreds of times. But now that it had come, they felt totally unprepared. Your voice did not frighten them. They feared that their entire future could be altered by a single conversation. The phone continued to light, and the room remained utterly silent. Then your love answered right before the call could end. They remained silent for several long moments. All they did was listen. Their countenance gradually shifted from anxiety to incredulity to a sincere smile that all of the family members saw right away. Everyone could see something spectacular taking place in front of them, but no one could hear the words coming through the phone. The person appeared lighter than they had in years after spending so much time suppressing their feelings. In the course of one chat, it seemed as if a great load had silently vanished. Everyone expected your sweetheart to clarify what had been said when the call came to a close. Rather, they surveyed the room and posed their own query. Have you ever had the feeling that months of uncertainty can be erased in a single, unexpected moment? Every face already had the answer, therefore no one responded. This revelation ties the entire story together, so don't miss any of it. The chat had not been dramatic or complex, your soulmate finally admitted. It was straightforward, sincere, and unexpectedly peaceful. They didn't feel the need to speculate about what might happen tomorrow for the first time in a long time. They came to see that true ties are not formed by coincidental events. They develop via tolerance, empathy, and the guts to stay true to themselves in the face of uncertainty. Family members started grinning one by one. Someone discreetly acknowledged that they had never before witnessed such serenity in your soulmate's eyes. Another claimed they could practically feel the difference in the space. The uncertainties that had surrounded the discussion at the start of the evening had entirely disappeared. Even people who had previously doubted this relationship now thought that something significant was happening. No one in the household would ever forget the curious evening that had started. The oldest family member quietly made her way to a nearby shelf and returned with an old family photo just as everyone was beginning to believe that the emotional evening had finally come to an end. "There's a big thing waiting for you, so stay until the very end." Every generation in this family has had one night they remembered forever. "Tonight is yours," they said softly as they placed the picture next to your soulmate. The room fell silent once more as everyone gazed at the picture and realized it represented much more than just memories. It stood for bravery, trust, and the moment someone finally stopped hiding what really mattered. Before anyone could get up from the table, another notification appeared on the screen, but it wasn't from the same person who had just called. Rather, it was from someone no one expected to hear from. Your soulmate smiled softly, holding the picture in one hand while taking another look at the phone in the other. They knew the night had changed them forever. The message remained on the screen, but your soulmate did not open it right away. A name associated with a forgotten chapter that everyone thought had ended long ago. The moment your soulmate read the first line of that message, their smile gradually faded and they whispered, "This changes everything because they know the truth now. My beloved child, don't skip. Stay till the end because something huge is waiting for you." Every family member sensed the sudden shift without asking a single question, and the room that had been filled with quiet smiles only moments before was now wrapped in anticipation once again. They knew that once those words were read, there would be no going back to the peaceful moment they had just experienced. Some truths arrive exactly when you're finally ready to face them, your soulmate said as they slowly glanced around the table. Then, with steady hands, they opened the message, and instead of accusations or confusion, the first sentence read, "I finally understand why your heart never changed." The words echoed in total silence. The message went on to acknowledge that many people had misinterpreted your soulmate's quiet determination. Some thought it was stubbornness, others thought it was fleeting emotion, but now, after seeing everything come to light, they realized it had always been sincerity. Your soulmate lowered the phone for a brief moment, unable to conceal the emotion in their eyes. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving others wrong, a family member whispered with a gentle smile. It's seeing them find the truth on their own. At that moment, everyone understood that the discussion was no longer about persuading anyone, but rather about patience being rewarded in the end. The family's eldest member slowly stood up again and gave your soulmate a proud look.